So I just finished reading second year volume 9 of Classroom to Elite. I was surprised there was already an English translation of this volume because it usually takes a good while. But this volume is different because the day after it was released in Japan, there was already an English translation, which I'm not complaining because I'm kind of glad there was already an English translation so I can finally read this volume, because this is the volume that I was really looking forward to ever since I found out what it's going to have and what's it going to be about, because a lot of interesting things happen and I'm just really looking forward for the future volumes because I just know that this is just the beginning of things to come. So with that, let's just begin. And like always, I am going to spoil some things that happen in this volume, so if you're not caught up or you haven't finished it, then you have been warned because I am going to spoil some things. So with that out of the way, let's just begin. So let's just start off with Nagumo's soliloquy. I don't really talk about the soliloquies often, but I feel like this one was kind of interesting based on what it was all about, which was Nagumo. Now, Nagumo is a very interesting character, and I think this soliloquy gives us more insight as to what his life was like before he entered in this school, that being the Advanced Nurturing High School. And it seems that his life was pretty easy. He was really good at sports and also academically as well, which as a result made him very popular, and that was something that Nagumo was always good at, being popular. Sure, he didn't know that there were some people who were not huge fans of him, but he didn't let that bother him, and that was pretty much his life for an elementary school and middle school. However, that all completely changed once he entered high school, because that's when he met Horikita Manabu, and then he would eventually meet Ayana Koji. And that's really interesting because it goes to show us that Manabu and Ayana Koji are in a whole different level. Like, it's very clear that these two are strong individuals, not just physically but also academically as well, and that is something that Nagumo realized as soon as he met these two. And of course, this would eventually lead to Nagumo wanting to fight Manabu, and then later on he would want to fight Ayana Koji as well. So yeah, very interesting soliloquy. And moving on to the first few pages of the volume, this just goes to show us once again why I enjoy reading Classroom the Elite. It's always like the small dialogues that really make this series more interesting, because you get to learn more about characters and events that happen around this series. And in this case, it was Ayana Koji. You see, Ayana Koji was walking towards school, and of course he sees that people are going to the school as well. However, one interesting thing that he says is the fact how everyone is treating it like it's just any other day. They're either walking towards the school, they're either talking with friends or people they know. For most students, it's just like any other typical day. There was nothing going to happen. But for Ayana Koji is different, because he realizes that this is going to be his last year in school, basically his last year having freedom. Because remember, Ayana Koji thinks that once he's done with high school and once he's finished with his 3 years, he's going to go back to the white room. And that is something that's really sad to read, because it just goes to show us how for Ayana Koji, his life has already been set, how he's just going to spend it on just being in the white room. So for now, he's just appreciating everything that's happening around him, because he knows that it may not last long, which of course that's just his way of thinking. But hopefully in the end of the series, hopefully there's actually a happy ending, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the future. So yeah, this is really interesting to read in the first few pages, because it just goes to show us that for Ayana Koji, he's appreciating the things around him, because for him, he thinks that this is going to be the last few times he'll be able to do things freely. And then moving on from that, let's just talk about the special exam in this volume. Now, to be fair, I didn't really have that many interests in the special exam. I think that was not really the main focus of this volume. But to be fair, I think this exam was probably the most simplest of exams of the series, because this exam, which is called the Cooperative Written Test, was just mainly all the students having to answer a bunch of questions. Now, of course, they couldn't answer all at the same time. It was basically everyone taking turns answering questions, with the class in total answering 100 questions of this exam. In this exam, Horikita's class will be going up against Sakenagi's class, and Ryuen's class will be going up against Ichinose's class. And this test was important for Horikita's class, because if they manage to win this exam against Sakenagi, then they'll be able to close the gap between them and Sakenagi's class. So it's very clear that Horikita's class is going to eventually be the new class A, but we'll just have to wait and see if that happens, which hopefully it does, because that will be a really good achievement for Horikita. And then afterwards, we then get the next event, which was the conversation between Ayana Koji and Nagumo, because this is where they talk about the battle that they're going to have between each other. Now, originally the battle was going to be involving the student council president, who is going to be the next student council president of the school. And originally the way Nagumo and Ayana Koji were going to compete is by whoever they choose as to be supporting for the next student council president, we're going to have to make sure that they became the next student council president. Now, who were going to be the competitors? Well, it was actually going to be Horikita and Ichinose to be battling for the next student council president. However, in a turn of events, while they were all discussing about the next student council president, this is where Ichinose decided to quit the student council, which of course shocked everyone, including Nagumo, because he wasn't expecting that to happen. It was also during that same conversation where Kyuin, remember Kyuin? Yeah, she also came bursting into the student council room because she was angry at the fact that there was somebody that was trying to frame her as a shoplifter. And when she confronted this person, the person said that it was all under Nagumo's orders. Now, of course, Nagumo quickly denied this, saying that he never gave anybody any orders, but of course, Kyuin doesn't believe him because, well, this is Nagumo and you don't really know what his true intentions are sometimes. After that whole event happens, we then get more interactions between Nagumo, Ayana Koji, Horikita, in which Nagumo tells Horikita that since Ichinose pretty much withdrew from the competition, she is now going to be the new student council president, which I was not expecting Horikita to be the new student council president, but that just goes to show us how much character development Horikita has gotten, because now she's going to be the new student council president of the school. However, with that being said, Nagumo still tells Horikita that she's going to have to find new student council members for the student council because, well, Yagami was one of the student council members, but of course we all know what happened to him in the culture festival arc. And now that Ichinose quit the student council, they're going to need 2 new members for the student council. Specifically, Nagumo says how they're going to need 1 second-year student and 1 first-year student. So now Horikita has been tasked to find new student council members, which of course she wasn't really that happy because she wanted to focus on the special exam, but she comes to realize that it is where it is. The first new student council member was Kushida, which of course, like something Ayana Koji pointed out, Horikita and Kushida are like oil and water, so he really was interested why Horikita chose Kushida to be a new student council member. And it's not like it was easy to make Kushida a new student council member because obviously Kushida wasn't a fan of working under Horikita now that she's the new student council president. And to make things even more worse for these two, Ichika being Ichika decides to jump into this conversation, and of course she starts to actually test Kushida's patience because she knows she can get away with it because they were talking in a very public place. So of course Kushida couldn't reveal her true personality. This would eventually lead to all of them having to look for another place that's private in order to have this conversation, but of course this didn't stop Ichika from just simply following them. And now that they had some privacy, this is where Kushida makes a demand to Horikita, saying that she would join the student council as long as Horikita begs her to join the student council. Basically, you know, those typical things, you know, that she has to be on her knees begging Kushida to join the student council. And at first, Kushida didn't really believe that she was going to do it because, well, she knows Horikita isn't the kind of person to do these kind of things. But surprisingly, Horikita accepts, and of course this shocks Kushida because she was never expecting Horikita to accept that offer. But she comes to realize that the only reason why Horikita is doing this is because it's going to benefit Horikita, and she realizes that Horikita is going to be able to use her, which of course angers Kushida. But then later on, she realizes that it's not really that big of a deal because she actually wants to see Horikita beg her to join the student council, which of course completely shocks Horikita because that was not her initial plan. You see, her initial plan was to just go along with whatever Kushida was going to demand, but she knew that Kushida wasn't going to be happy with it because, well, it's very clear that the only reason why Horikita will ever do the demand that she asked was because it will benefit her. So of course, with this way of thinking, she realized that Kushida was going to eventually join the student council no matter what. But with this turn of events, she now comes to realize that maybe this was not such a great idea because now she actually does have to beg Kushida to join the student council. And after this leads to Horikita telling Ayana Koji and Ichika to go away because she doesn't want anybody to see her in that state. And if you're curious as to who the other new student council member is none other than Nanase from class 1D. Now, originally Horikita wanted Ishigami to be the new student council member, but he refused. So it seems that the second best option was none other than Nanase. But what's really interesting about Nanase's enrollment to the student council was how quickly she accepted being in the student council, which of course made Ayana Koji very interested because he's wondering if she has another reason to join the student council, because as you all know, Ayana Koji is very suspicious over Nanase. But of course, as of right now, we don't really know if Nanase is truly an enemy, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the future. Then we get this next event in which it involves Ayana Koji with some class these students, this being Ichinose class, and it's people like Kanzaki, Himeno, Watanabe, and Amikura. Now what's really interesting about this whole interaction is just it's very clear that Ichinose class is starting to grow concerned as to what's going to be the future for the class, because they've seen that Ichinose is not in a great state, like she hasn't been for a while. So because of this, they're now starting to worry as to what's going to happen with their class, even if they're ever going to be in class A. And here we get to see that Kanzaki is actually growing the number of people that are going to want change in their class, because it's very clear that not everyone is completely blindly worshiping Ichinose. There's very clearly some people who want change in the class. So it's really nice to see that Kanzaki is actually trying to make change in the class. Obviously there's still kind of conflict between the class, because while the people who want change are doing their best to make changes for the class, there's also people who support Ichinose like Watanabe and Amikura, who still believe that Ichinose still is somebody that they should count on and is somebody that could be good for the entire class. However, of course there's mixed opinions, because based on what Ichinose has done, and they also recently discovered that Ichinose quit the student council based on the rumors that were floating around, it's very clear that a lot of people are very unclear as to what they're going to do involving Ichinose. But it was also in the same conversation that Ayana Koji admits that Ichinose confessed to him during the island exam arc, which unsurprisingly shocks the people who were hearing this conversation. It's very clear that a lot of them weren't expecting Ichinose to ever like someone, especially someone like Ayana Koji, but then this gives them an idea as to what they should do about Ichinose. Basically, they tell Ayana Koji to talk to Ichinose, to have a conversation with her, to hang out with her, to see how she's actually feeling, what's her next move, what is she planning to do with the class, stuff like that. At first, Ayana Koji was not really into this idea, as well as some people in the group as well, because they were saying, well, Ayana Koji has a girlfriend, so this is not going to be a good idea to do because he's already in a relationship. But of course, Ayana Koji then accepts it, and he makes a call to Ichinose saying that they were going to hang out. And of course, this shocks Ichinose, but she eventually does accept the invitation. And then later on in the volume, we get a conversation between Ayana Koji and Kei, in which it seems that Kei is already making plans on what to do for the winter break. And one of these plans is to hang out with Ayana Koji the same day as he's supposed to have his meetup with Ichinose. Now, I'll give Ayana Koji credit for being honest, because he then tells Kei that he can't do that specific day because he's going to meet Ichinose. Now, obviously, this doesn't sit well with Kei because it's just going to be him and Ichinose. So, obviously, Kei is not going to be fine with them. But Ayana Koji tells her that the only reason why he's doing this is to help her class, which of course confuses Kei as to why he's even helping them in the first place, because, well, it is logical considering the competition around the school. So it's very clear that if a class is not doing so well, they should just remain like that because it will be less competition. So of course Kei is confused as to why Ayana Koji is helping out Ichinose's class, but of course Ayana Koji doesn't give too much specific details. But even then, even with this explanation, it's very clear that Kei is still not happy about this, and of course this leads to them having a little fight. Here's where Ayana Koji says that he could have easily told Kei that she's the only person that matters to him and stuff like that, but he chose not to, which is interesting, but also at the same time messed up, considering the fact that it's very clear that Kei is not happy about any of this, but he's just letting it all happen just because he's curious as to what's going to happen involving Kei, which to be honest is pretty messed up to do. But this is Ayana Koji we're talking about, so I'm not really surprised that this is his line of thinking. But anyway, because of this, he still ends up going with Ichinose. They end up at the gym doing some workouts, and eventually they end up hanging out more after the gym. And this is where Ichinose once again shows us that she's not stupid, because she's very quick to find out that the only reason why Ayana Koji and her are hanging out is because, well, she knows that it's most likely has something to do with her classmates, because they obviously want to know what's going on with her. So yeah, it just goes to show us that Ichinose is a very intelligent individual, as she was very quick to find out why her and Ayana Koji are hanging out. But surprisingly, she's not mad about it. It seems like she's just happy to be spending time with Ayana Koji, which you should keep that in mind, because this will become very important in the next few chapters. It was also during the same time that Ayana Koji was doing investigation between involving the Kuryuin shoplifting incident, because well, Kuryuin actually asked for his help because she knew that he was capable of doing the investigation very well. Now of course Ayano Koji first didn't want to do it, but because Kuryuin actually helped him out during the whole Iron exam involving him and Togishiro, he realized he had no choice but to get to the bottom of this, because he realized that there was something going on with the third years. And one person he was very interested in talking to was none other than Nazuna. This is the girl that's always hanging out around Nagumo, so it's very clear that he realized that there was something that she probably knew about this whole incident. But when he does meet her, he realized that she's actually crying and she looks very sad. This is because he finds out later on that one of her friends ended up leaving the school, which has affected her a lot. She then actually reveals more information about what her life was like in the third years, which isn't really great because it just goes to show us just how controlling Nagumo is. And to be honest, it just seemed that he was like a dictator because he was in full control of the entire third year. But in this conversation between Nazuna and Ayano Koji, we find out that there was actually a contract that pretty much everyone accepted, which in this contract, it reveals that a lot of the students in third year gave a lot of points to Nagumo in exchange for them hopefully getting a ticket to reach into class A. Of course, this was something that a lot of students, especially in the C class and D class, were really looking forward to, because they actually could have a chance to getting into class A and graduating, because at this point they realized that there was no way they were going to get to class A, so this was their only option. But of course it came at a cost, and it was a fact that they had to do and say whatever Nagumo told them to do. And there's other things that happened during this investigation, but to basically sum it all up, in the end it is revealed that Kiriyama was the one who set this all up. He's the one that was responsible for trying to frame Kuryuin as a shoplifter. And if you don't know who this person is, he was the vice president of the student council. Not only that, but he's also well known in the community, the Classroom the Elite community, as Nagumo's dog. And as a result, because he's the mastermind of this whole entire plot, he was actually suspended for a week. Now what's interesting about this though is the fact that everyone who was involved in this whole investigation promised that they were not going to talk about this incident anymore, and that's the end of the whole Kuryuin shoplifting incident. And then let's just go back to Ichinose, because she has become a different person. Okay, so the first thing I need to talk about was her conversation with Ayano Koji in his room. What's actually very weird about this is the fact that after Ayano Koji was done talking to the third years involving the whole Kuryuin investigation, he then comes back to his room only to realize that Ichinose was standing outside of his door, and it's revealed that she's been standing there for a really good while. How no one living in that building didn't find that weird is another question in its own, but yeah, Ichinose has been waiting for Ayano Koji for a really long time, and eventually he does invite her to his room. It was in this conversation that of course, you know, Ichinose talks about Karizawa, because of course she's going to talk about that. And this is where Ichinose reveals that she still likes Ayano Koji. She still has feelings for him, and he also hints that in the near future she's going to do whatever it takes in order for him to be focusing on her. So yeah, it's very clear that Ichinose is not giving up on Ayano Koji. Despite him already being in a relationship, she is going to do something to have Ayano Koji all for herself. Another thing that also happens involving Ichinose is towards the end, after the test results, which is revealed that Horikita and Ichinose's class were the winners of the exam, meaning that Sakinagi and Ryuin's class lost. Sakinagi, Ichinose, and Ayano Koji have a conversation in private in which Sakinagi straight up tells Ichinose to stay away from Ayano Koji, because if she doesn't do that anytime soon, she is going to regret it. But Ichinose doesn't take this advice seriously and tells Sakinagi that there's nothing wrong with being around Ayano Koji, because she knows that there's nothing wrong with Ayano Koji, and she believes that Ayano Koji will never do anything to her. And when she said this, I was just like, really? Does she really actually believe that Ayano Koji isn't going to do anything with her? I mean, the person who is giving her this advice is Sakinagi, you know, somebody that pretty much seems to know what they're talking about most of the time. So the fact that she didn't take this advice seriously just goes to show us that it's too late for Ichinose. Like, she's already blinded with love. Like, she's literally believing into the fact that Ayano Koji won't do anything to her and that she is perfectly fine around Ayano Koji. Which, if you know anything about Ayano Koji, because he has revealed this so many times, is the fact that he's only helping Ichinose out and is only by her side because it's beneficial for him. So I don't know why she's really this confident into saying that Ayano Koji isn't going to do something to her, because it's not like Ayano Koji is an angel. Like, he has shown what he's willing to do in the series. And then lastly, let's talk about the conversations that she had with Ryuen as well as Karizawa. So let's first talk about the one with Karizawa, because that's the one that I actually want to talk about more. So Ichinose and Karizawa have a conversation towards the end of the volume in which Karizawa asks if there's something going on between her and Ayana Koji, and Ichinose says no. However, as they are walking away after the end of the conversation, she says not yet. Something between her and Ayana Koji hasn't happened yet. So this indicates that Ichinose is clearly going to do something to have Ayana Koji all to herself. So I mean, that's just something I was never expecting Ichinose to do, to try to steal someone else's partner. But it's very clear that she's willing to do that just to be by Ayana Koji's side. Really interested in this. I know there's going to be some rivalry between Kei and Ichinose. And some people pointed it out as well, is that this actually could be some more character development for Kei. Like, Kei could actually start to be determined to make sure that she doesn't lose Ayana Koji. Now, of course, this all depends on how the other volumes are going to be, and I'm really looking forward to them, because I just want to see if this is actually the case. I hope this is true, because I do want to see more of Kei become more of this strong individual, because she was already a strong individual, but in these past volumes, especially in second year, she hasn't really done a whole lot in the series compared to first year. So I really do hope that this is like a big moment for Kei to show us what she's willing to do in order to stay by Ayana Koji's side. I am really looking forward to this, because this is going to be really great. And then of course, let's talk about the Ryuen and Ichinose conversation. Nothing really too major. It's just the fact that Ryuen realizes that he's going to have to keep an eye on Ichinose, because she has changed drastically. He's already become very full aware that something has happened in order for Ichinose to have changed drastically. So really looking forward to that, because it's very clear that now Ichinose is going to be doing a lot of things in the near future. And that's pretty much the entire volume. I didn't cover everything that happened, because of course there were just a lot of things that happened in this volume, so I wasn't going to get into too much detail on the other scenes that happened. Like, for example, there was this one moment with Hashimoto and Kaneda from Class C, in which Hashimoto reveals that in the near future he's going to have to choose who he's going to follow. Will it be Sakenagi's class? Will it be Horikita's class? Or would it be Ryuen's class? Very interesting stuff, because it just goes to show us that Hashimoto is probably going to betray Sakenagi in the near future, but we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, I think this volume was fine. Was it the best volume of second year? No, not really. I think it was mostly a lot of setup for things to come in the future for the series. I think that was pretty much the entire point of this volume, to just give us an idea of what's to come next, because there's still a lot of things that are going to happen, and I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next volume. It's going to be actually focusing on the winter break, which I'm curious to see what's going to happen, because I just know there's going to be a lot of slice of life. I know there's probably going to be more character development. This is just a guess, but I'm hoping that there's some sort of confrontation between Kei and Ichinose. That would be something really interesting to see, especially if it happens during Christmas. That would be like a very interesting read, because once again, we just know that Ichinose is planning on doing something in order to have Ayana Koji all to herself. But like I said, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next in the next volume. So with that, that's pretty much the entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.